You are listening to a special broadcast regarding the 2022 general local elections on Peach City Community Radio on CFUZ 92.9 FM and online at www.peachcityradio.org. Peach City Radio volunteers invited all 5 registered candidates for mayor of the city of Penticton to be interviewed. Key topics were selected to be asked to all candidates, with several questions developed for each specific candidate based on their campaign or on public information. All mayoral interviews have been made available for streaming on peachcityradio.org. Peach City Radio is actively looking for volunteers interested in news and events that would like to bring their passion to the airwaves. Email news@cfuz.ca or contact the station if you're interested in joining our news and events collective and make impactful radio in the South Okanagan.
Peach City Radio and the interviewers do not endorse particular candidates. Interviews will be edited for time and sound quality, but not for content. We're here with Julius Bloomfield, a mayoral candidate for the Penticton election for 2022. And we're just sitting down to ask a few questions and get to know him a little bit better.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Good.
Good.
So I'm Julius Bloomfield. I'm running for mayor of Penticton, and I've lived in the area for 34 years. I came over here from Britain in 1988.
Why Penticton?
Well, it's a little bit of a story, but Penticton kind of found me more than I found Penticton. I came over looking to buy a business, buy a pub or a hotel, and got on a plane to come over and check out BC. And on the plane, I sat next to a couple, and he was from Penticton, and he told me about Penticton. And when I landed in Vancouver, I'd never been here before, and I rented a car in Vancouver and checked out Vancouver a little bit, but quickly made my way over the Hope Princeton. And when I got to the lookout above Skaha Lake, there, the view spot above Skaha Lake, right. Where you see the city in front of you and you can see 2 lakes and so on. And I just went, oh, yeah, that'll do. Yeah. I think that'll do. Right. And I'd only been in the country for 48 hours. And yeah, that guy on the plane, he sold it.
Sold it to you.
Yeah.
So how did you get from airport to Penticton? Like, did you decide to buy a property, or did you buy a business first, or?
Buy a property. We had to buy a business to get in the country. So that was our way of immigration. Was buy a business, employ Canadians, and so that's how we got in. It was I'd spent my whole life moving around everywhere, all around Britain, and got here and never moved again. And I do a lot of traveling, but I look at other places that are great to live in, and you say, I'd love to live here, I'd love to live there, and went to New Zealand, see my sister in New Zealand. Yeah, that's a nice country. I could live there, but could you leave the Okanagan for it? Not really, So it's like.
So do you live in Penticton itself, the city of Penticton? Or
I live in Naramata.
Naramata, okay. So you live outside of Penticton.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I have horses.
Because you have horses.
The horses, yeah. I had to find a piece of land for my horses, and there was a cheap piece of land in just above Naramata there in the pine trees. So I cleared it, built my house, and that's where I live.
So why exactly are you running now for mayor? I know you're part of council. You are on council currently.
Yep.
So why mayor now?
So those people who know me, they know that I've always been interested in politics for quite a long time. I ran provincially for the Green Party in 2009. I ran for mayor in 2011. Just missed. And so then, you realize, you got to take this one step at a time. So went for council, done 4 years on council now, done my apprenticeship,
Was that just so that you had experience with the municipality and the bureaucracy behind that, or?
Yeah, it's incremental, but one thing I did realize is that, in the interest that I've had in dealing in politics and working on campaigns and being in campaigns, if you really want to make a change in your area, in your city, then municipal politics is where you make the greatest change. Getting into provincial, that's a little more opaque. And federal is really just another stratosphere, you don't have that much influence on change within your own city. So when I ran for mayor is when I made a commitment to myself just to stick to municipal politics, and because that's where you have the most effect on what's going on in your area.
So being in City Hall for the last 4 years, you have a unique vision on what you would change now being mayor. How do you see that going forward?
I think that that we've done some good things in the past 4 years. There's some things that I would do differently. I'd look to work more collaboratively with provincial and federal governments. I didn't like getting into a fight with the provincial government. It's nice to get, on the social housing issues and so on.
We're talking about David Eddy.
Yeah, and it's, it's nice to have a fight. Everybody likes a good fight, but the trouble is when you have a fight about an issue, at the end of the fight, you still got the issue.
That's right.
And you haven't moved anywhere forward. In fact, you've probably moved backwards, right? Because everybody's now siloed. Everybody's in their corners. And nobody's talking to each other. That's not the way to move forward. So I would have done it quite a bit differently, I think.
Do you feel that both sides are now entrenched?
Not entrenched, but I think there's enough history there that that they sort of gracefully avoid each other, but I can say that when I was at UBCM, I made a point of hunting down David Eby and shook hands with him and said, hey, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, and and hope to have more collaboration in the future, and because I really think that's the way to move forward. And but by the same token, I made sure I got next to Kevin Falcon and did the same thing with him and shook his hand and said, because whoever ends up in power in the province, we've got to work with them, and so I don't want to be at odds with anybody that's signing checks that help the city.
So your expectations of your mayoral residency for the 4 years, what do you expect to see changed over that 4 years? Like, what is your main goal?
I'd like to tackle the opioid crisis that we've got. I think that's the real crisis that we have. Excuse me. I'd like to tackle the homeless issue, which partly goes hand in hand with the opioid crisis. I'd like to tackle the affordable housing issue, and I think that we can, if we move forward on those fronts, I think everything else will sort of fall into place. They're the main contentious issues, and I think anybody who's got the solutions for those is as long as you manage everything else properly, as long as you govern everything else properly, then I think that,
Well, let's talk about the addiction issues. Many people a lot of the candidates are talking about the addictions issues. What is your solution for that addictions issue? Like, what is the municipal government going to be able to do?
Yeah, traditionally the municipal government has always shied away from getting too involved in healthcare and the opioid issues, and I think that now we've got a situation where we've got 21st century drugs and we're trying 20th century solutions. So we've really got to change our thinking as to how we're going to approach the problem. And one of the first steps is to deal with the addicts that are on the street, to deal with the homeless that are on the street, but to and as far as the addicts situation is, getting a CAR 40 program, I think, getting those mental health workers out with the RCMP on the wellness checks, but also getting the mental health workers to work with the fire department on their overdose calls.
I'm not sure a whole lot of our residents know what the CAR 40 program is. If you can expand on that a little bit, exactly what that program is, what it looks like as a cost for the municipality, how that would be played out, that would be interesting.
Yeah, so the CAR 40 program is where when the RCMP get called on a wellness check, i.e. like a mental health call, somebody's not doing too well, then the RCMP officer would go there, and if there's a person that needs treatment straight away, then they be responsible for getting them to the hospital, getting them set through the process. That officer has to stay with that person until they're handed over to Interior Health. They've gone through the emergency rooms, and they've actually got a mental health nurse or a mental health practitioner at the hospital that's taken control and taken charge of that person. And
freeing up the RCMP to do
that can take several hours. That can take hours at the hospital. And if you've got a CAR 40 program, you've got a mental health specialist going out with the RCMP on that call. They can take over and help process that person through the medical system and let the RCMP officer go early, so that they're not spending hours at the hospital, and it just releases them to carry on with the rest of their duties.
So is that funded by the province or by the healthcare or by federal?
Traditionally, always been funded by the province, and and municipalities have always traditionally focused on lobbying the provincial government to fund that program. What I'm saying is that let's get the province to pay for it, but if they're not going to do it straight away, then maybe the municipality has to look at funding those mental health specialists to go out on maybe on a pilot project for a year, and going out with them, going out with the RCMP, and let's get this. We've got to get this done now. It's got to be done, quickly rather than waiting for the provincial wheels to turn.
Right. So, how? I guess my question is, how is that going to get through the municipality? How are you planning to do that? What is your plan to get it?
Yeah, it starts with the budget process. So elections are in October. The budget process starts in November, budgeting for next year, and so that would be a consideration in the budget. So that's for the council to decide on. Very first month of office, we go straight into budget deliberations through November and December. If we get it in, passed in the budget, then there's some funds available for funding that kind of program, and then it's working with agencies. Agencies basically are probably the best resource. I mean, there's several agencies that work in Penticton that we could work with directly on that, and there's Ask Wellness, One Sky, even Pathways. Like this. There's various avenues to go to get this ball rolling really quickly.
Okay, excellent. What do you intend to advocate for in terms of housing affordability and availability? That's up on your list there.
Yeah, it is. I know, And so affordable housing, affordable housing means different things to different people. So it normally falls into two categories. It's either rental or owned. And so affordable housing for rental, that's a fairly easy fix. The city owns a lot of property. It owns a lot of land. Some of that land is just used for, scratch parking at the moment, especially downtown. There's some sites on Ellis, the old Greyhound station, that could be utilized for affordable housing for working poor. I think that's one of the focuses that we need to have.
In what way?
So the city could get into an agreement with a stakeholder, a partner and that could be a government or it could be a private, where where a facility, a housing complex gets built on that land. So the city puts up the land, without any cost. without any charge. The building goes up. If it's private, then it'll be under a contract where the builder gets paid out. It's handed over to a non-profit society to run, and the rents would be based on the cost of construction only. So if you take out the land component and you take out the profit component on a rental building, then the rents should be, let's say, 25%, around 25% below market value. That could increase if the provincial government wants to get involved, if they want to issue grants, if they want to take on the construction. But we have similar housing to that, but we need more housing like that. And so from a rental perspective, that's one way to do it. There is also cooperative housing. We could have cooperative housing models going up on those same properties. And so cooperative housing is a little more complicated, conceptually for people to envision, but it certainly is worth talking about in a longer discussion, longer than an election cycle. And as far as as far as purchasing goes, I've looked at different cities and what they do about creating affordable housing. And let me tell you, after a lot of searching and a lot of research, I can say that, and personal experience in trying to market affordable housing developments, for ownership, it's not so easy. But one of the ideas that is out there, and it is working quite well in a couple of other cities, is to have a grant system for first-time home buyers, for young couples or people that are looking to purchase their first home in Penticton, as long as they live in Penticton, they work in Penticton, and and if they're struggling for the down payment, then the city can do a grant program for helping them with the down payment. And it would be a grant, not a loan. And there's obviously certain criteria.
So part of that would be that they would have to be...
Income. It'd be income criteria. There'd be value criteria for whatever they're buying. So whatever they're buying has to be, say, an insured property. So it basically has to be new. So there's a home warranty on it. It would have to be, they'd have to have maximum financing so that they need the help. They have to prove the need. They have to prove the need, and they have to prove their income. So there's thresholds as to if their income is below a certain level, and they wouldn't be able to rent out the unit and or resell it for a period of time. And this is just mirroring what's happened in other municipalities.
So what you've actually researched and seen in other municipalities.
Yes, and so and that works. And the money for the grant can come from an extra DCC on all the new construction that goes on in the city. So in effect, every new development that goes on in the city would be contributing to affordable housing.
So putting the burden more on
developers,
to be able to afford a more affordable housing.
And because the question of affordable housing comes up at every development application. So if every development was contributing in this way to affordable housing, then that question's already been answered on all of those development proposals.
And what about short-term rental restrictions on, how do you feel about the short-term rental restrictions?
Yeah, well, recently we had a report on short-term rentals at council, and they felt that the system was okay and no further action was needed on short-term rentals. I disagreed. I made a motion to look into how to restrict short-term rentals. That was approved by council, and so that report is coming back from staff as we speak. So I don't know whether it'll probably come back after the election, but I'm in favour of limiting short-term rentals. Now, how we do that, that's a different question. It could be how limits on how it's operated, or just a limit on the number of short-term rentals. And from a city perspective, we look at what's the easiest thing to govern. So we're not there to, we can't keep a constant check on every short-term rental and how it's operated. That's not feasible. We don't have the manpower to do that. So the easiest thing to do, I think, would be for the city just to have a limit on the number of short-term rentals that are allowed in the city. And
would they license those out? Or?
Yeah, they're licensed. You have to have a license for short-term rental. And so,
licenses.
Yeah,
then.
yeah, and then it's if there's a cap on the number, then I think that would ease the burden of people trying to buy houses in a market where they're getting outbid by people that are buying for investment for short-term rentals.
Let's switch to the crime in the city. Actual crime and the perception of crime have been raised as a major issue for communities across BC. How do you intend to address this issue as it falls within
the crime? So the prolific offenders report that's come up from the provincial government has just been released by the provincial government, and it's pretty interesting. We've been harping on about this with the province for years now, and the crime in the city, the crime in Penticton, is mostly smaller crime. There's some larger crimes, but most of our problems are from smaller crimes, smaller thefts, car thefts, vehicles, etc. And if we can deal with the prolific offenders, and the prolific offenders tend to be addicts. They're not all addicts. There's some mental health issues there as well. But I think once they are taken care of, once the system is taking care of those, then
just like flow down from the mental health.
Yeah. So the prolific offender program that is coming into play, it's not there yet, but it's coming into play, is where the people that need mental health services, the people that need addiction and rehabilitation services, they get taken into the system in a series of complex care facilities that the provincial government are proposing, or they're building right now. They've recently did a press release, an announcement that they're going to spend $162 million on building 15 facilities around the province, and they're calling them complex care facilities. And it's for these people that need mental health services and rehabilitation services, and for the prolific offenders, the people that have got 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 convictions against them.
Right.
And they're just habitual.
In and out.
Yeah. So I think if we can solve that issue, I think that will reduce the crime rate dramatically. So
is it fair to say that you feel that the theft in the municipality and a lot of the actual violent crime is coming from abuse issues or
for
substance
sure.
abuse?
For sure, yeah. I mean, in our discussions that we have with the various agencies involved, and we just spent a morning yesterday morning with those agencies that deal with these issues in Penticton, and the prolific offender issue is here the same as it is anywhere else and any other city. There's probably 20 or 30 individuals in Penticton that if they were taken into complex care facilities, then we'd see a dramatic drop in crime in this city.
Interesting. Let's talk about one of the big button issues in this municipality's election is the bike lanes.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the bike lanes, and what can we do to maybe make the residents a little bit, happier with them maybe, or
so
make them more equitable? The
bike lanes, there's a lot of people that don't like the bike lanes, and I can understand their frustration. I can, I get it. I can see. I mean, when the bike lanes, and I was for the bike lanes. I'm still for the bike lanes. But when I saw them first get built, I thought, oh gosh, that's bigger than I thought it was going to be. And they can certainly be improved and made to look, a little more aesthetically better.
How would you do that? How would you be able to do that?
Well, I don't think they need as many signs as they've got, right? There's signs everywhere, right? And there's, there's a lot of signs on Martin Street around the bike lane. So, I don't think we need all of those. But one thing I'll say about the bike lanes is that what makes a city, well, that's a question. Take that away. A city is a community. It's a community of people that has a selection of facilities that everybody uses. But not everybody uses every facility. So a good city has things like, we have a swimming pool, we have the gym, we have the rec center, we have the SOEC, not everybody uses those. We have a library that not everybody uses. We have the museum. We have the art gallery. We have other facilities that not everybody uses. Lots of people do use them. The senior center is on city-owned land, so the senior center is subsidized. We have a transit system that not everybody uses. We have a golf course that is subsidized. Not everybody plays golf. But the city, the criteria for having a facility should not be, is everybody going to use it? It's what makes the city great. Having a city without any of those facilities, well, it just wouldn't be a city. We need these facilities in order to make it a great place to live. And the bike lane is just one of those facilities.
The end result of the bike lane.
Just to end up on that, everybody that uses those facilities, everybody that uses the library, they love the library. Everybody that uses the golf course loves the golf course. Everybody that uses the museum, the art gallery, the swimming pool, goes to the SOEC, rides the buses, they all love those facilities. And they can't imagine not having those facilities.
But the people using the bike lanes love the bike lanes.
Yes. They love the bike lane as much as the library people love the library, as much as the golfers love the golf course.
So with the way that it's set up currently now and the future expansions of that bike lane, the people who are using the bike lanes, you feel they are happy with how that has progressed? The people that are using it?
I think so. I think, some of them probably feel the same way as me, it looks a little big, like we could do with a little less, but that's fair. I've heard those comments, but nobody says do away with them, they're just concerned about the size of them,
and how they
and the intrusion, but right. Change is constant. Nobody likes change, but change is constant, So.
Well, change is difficult for a lot of us.
Yes.
So your home is outside of the city of Penticton. You live in Naramata.
Yeah.
Candidates are alluding to that to a few of the mayoral candidates that don't actually live in Penticton. What's your response to voters' concern that you don't live within the city limits?
I'd say, like some past mayors and councillors, I don't live in the city, but I work in the city. I've owned businesses in the city. I employ people in the city. I'm here every day. I spend more time in Penticton than I do outside. Certainly more of my waking life, that's for sure. And the reason that I live outside of the city is because there was a piece of land that was a place for my horses. Unfortunately, I love horses, and that keeps me poor. But I found a cheap piece of land that I cleared it. I cleared the trees, and I built my house, and that's where I live. if I didn't have my horses, I'd probably live in the city. But yeah, I love horses.
So we got that you love horses.
Yeah.
But being outside of the city, do you feel that it's fair that people are concerned that maybe your interests lie more in Naramata than it does in Penticton? Or
I can see that argument, but I would refute it, because I am here to make sure that Penticton is a great, successful city, and without a healthy Penticton, we won't have a healthy South Okanagan. Having a great Penticton means a great South Okanagan, and the two go hand in hand. And one thing about not living in the city is that I don't have any specific bias to any decisions based on where I live or what properties I own or don't own. So I don't have any bias in that regard.
Well, that kind of leads into my next question. As a realtor, you have the potential to be in conflict of interest within municipal decisions. How do you plan on managing any potential conflicts or even perceived conflicts of interest within?
If I have a conflict, then I recuse. It's as simple as that. I recused on a recent application for a variance that I said no. I said I can't deal with that. and I left the room. And it affects my business life as well. I had a referral from a realtor that wanted to refer me to somebody who was going to sell a property here, and it was suitable for redevelopment. And I said, you know what, I just can't take that referral. So I turned it away, and somebody else got the referral, and they've sold the property.
So you did that on your own?
I did that on my own.
With no...
Yeah. And that property just recently sold. And it was a fairly sizable deal, but I turned it away because, of my position on council.
You feel conflicted.
Yeah.
Do you also feel that if somebody comes to you and requests that you recuse yourself from a particular, does that cause you to be second guess that decision again, or will that make you think that maybe?
If there's a borderline case, then I'll get a legal opinion in, and I have also on occasions paid myself for a legal opinion on various decisions on different properties.
Okay.
Yeah.
The urban sprawl is a consideration as Penticton grows. It also places homes in wildfire-deferred Spiller Road area, pushed out the boundaries of residential development. What are your thoughts on how Penticton will grow in the next 4 years, and where and how should residential development occur?
I'm actually a big fan of growing with inside the footprint of the existing city. Getting into interface areas and is very challenging, and I actually live in an interface area, so I understand the challenges. There's a lot of considerations for interface areas. There's probably an extra building code that would be needed, in my opinion. As far as fire suppression goes on those houses, and how you fire smart properties, and other factors. Not only that's over and above the cost of servicing those developments. So. Sprawl is not something that I'm in favor of, and I have voted against that.
So you're looking to grow up more, or how do we?
So the densification of the city is a question of how do we densify? Do we grow up in certain areas, or do we densify to a lower extent in all of the areas? So, do we say, okay, these areas are, certain areas are residential only, single family only, and no densification? And do we concentrate that densification in the downtown? That's more of a focus. That should be the focus for the next OCP, review. Really, if we're going to densify, how does that densification work? Is it overall throughout the city, or is it just in certain areas of the city? If it's in certain areas of the city, then some of the height restrictions may have to change, and but that's a decision for the next OCP review.
Okay. I think that covers all of my questions.
Yeah.
Was there anything that you wanted to specifically discuss, or anything that you wanted the people of Penticton to actually know, or how, an opinion that you feel that they need to see from you?
Yeah, I think that I'd like to see Penticton become a more resilient city, as far as how resiliency is based on how we can get through some tough times, whether it be tough economic times or climate change related catastrophic changes, if you like, or not. But I think that we have the potential. We own our own utility. We have the potential to produce our own power. Renewable energy. I think that's always been a pet idea of mine, and I think that we have the ability to make our own power, and we should be doing that.
Doing that more proactively.
Not only to save. I mean, not only to be more cost effective in power production, and how that would benefit the citizens, but also take, for instance, like Nova Scotia right now. It's had a massive storm. They've been without power for 3-4 days now. If we were producing our own power, we wouldn't be relying on major transmission lines to bring the power into the city. At least we'd be able to limp on through any disaster.
So you're thinking grants and things that help with solar, or with geothermal?
Solar, geothermal. Right now there's the Okanagan Water Basin Authority is saying that the dam on the Weir and the dam on the Channel is at the end of its life and it needs to be replaced. Let's put a couple of turbines in there. We got the potential for low head power generation on that weir, and I think that that could be a win-win situation. But solar applications as well. Turbines on the water lines coming down from Greyback Reservoir. Lots of ways to make things work.
Excellent. Well, we'd like to thank Julius Bloomfield, who's running for mayor in the city of Penticton, for taking the time out to talk with us. Thank you so much, and good luck on your election.
Thank you. There we go. Thanks.